What is up, my fellow conspirator and conspirators? It is, of course, I, your boy, Matty Milligan, and this is the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Woo! Guys, today we're going to be talking about the power of vulnerability in your marketing. Now, a lot of people are going to misinterpret that. They're going to be like, oh, you're going to give me the next tactic that I can use in my marketing. Being like, okay, just do these things to get people to buy more of my products. It's like, give me that power tool and then I can use that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not telling you to go out there and do fake vulnerability, right? Because that's not authentic. Vulnerability is usually something where there was a point in your life where you felt ashamed or guilty or angry or you hated someone or you were very sad, something more so private that happened to you and made you feel a very specific way. And you hold on to that deep inside of you. And you don't want to share it with anyone else because you're afraid that you're going to be judged for what you're saying and what you've done in the past. But I've found that when you are vulnerable and you do put yourself out there in an authentic way, people are going to connect with you because you're sharing your emotions and you're sharing stuff about your past that you aren't comfortable necessarily opening up about. And one thing I notice a lot of people do, especially these influencers, and I have nothing against the term influencer. A lot of people are hating on it these days, and influencer marketing will still be around for a long time. In fact, I think I invented influencer marketing about 20 years ago. I'm not going to lie, but that's a whole story for another day. But influencer marketing, where you get these, I guess, authorities or celebrities to plug your products, that works to a certain extent. But you see a lot of these people out there where they are being fake and they are being fraudsters and scammers. And heck, they're going to make sales in some cases, but I think that people can see through you very easily. I think that because people have been lied to so many times by marketers and businesses and corporations for the most part, they feel they've been had. So they're going to put up basically this barrier between themselves and that person or that business because they can see through the phoniness, right? There's this expression where it's like the true self is always shining through. So if you try and put on some sort of front and you try and be fake, people are going to see through that right away. And I've had this in my past. Like I've had times when I've tried to fake the funk and try to be someone that I had. Usually, and for the most part, this was when I was a younger man in my teens and early 20s, mostly as a teenager. And when you do put up this front, you push people away and they're going to notice it right away. And if you want a good way to get attention, heck, being vulnerable in a fake way is a great way to get attention because people are going to make fun of you because you're being fake. So that's a really good way to do it. But I think that so many people are afraid to be vulnerable and put themselves out there is because, again, they're afraid of what other people think. Even with me creating this show, I'm kind of a weird dude. I'll admit that from any day of the week. I was very uncomfortable as a young man growing up, and I felt like a super weird dude. I felt like I never fit in, and I was always looking for the next group of friends to impress, and really just finding the next thing. There's this old Mad TV sketch. I think there's this like kid named Stuart. And he's always like, "Look what I can do! Look what I can do!" And he does some crazy move for his mom, just trying to get attention. And there was times in my life when I was that dancing monkey, like putting myself out there in a very fake way to try and impress people that I didn't really necessarily. Now I'm like, why did I do that in the past? So I think expressing who you are is super important, right? Especially if you are weird and really leaning into that. That's why with this show, The Underground Marketing Conspiracy, originally one of the reasons why I took so long to put it out there was because I was like, oh, it's weird, it's sketchy, like, oh, people are gonna think I'm some weirdo talking about like conspiracy theories and marketing at the same time, and oh, they're gonna make fun of me, and I should just stop right now and never talk about it ever again. But what I decided to do less than a month ago was really just lean into this and go all in. Like I'm a weird little dude, all right? Like I'm 5'6", so I'm not that tall. I have very long, unwashed, uncut hair. In fact, I'm losing my hair on one side of my head faster than the other one, which makes me very self-conscious in some cases. I'm not necessarily in the best shape. Like I do have man boobs as well, and those are things where talking about them, even putting it out there, I feel very vulnerable, right? Especially since advertising as a man, it's like, oh man, you need to be tall, dark, and handsome. So me growing up, when I would hear that, it was like this jab that always was like, oh, like I'm not tall at all. I'm like the palest dude, and I'm kind of a weird looking guy. Like I had a lot of facial tics growing up, and I still have them to these day. Like I don't know, I've never really been diagnosed with any kind of nervous disorder, but I have facial tics, and for me, I'm always focusing on how I can control that so no one else can ever do that. I remember there was this one time in soccer when I just had this like tic attack and I had to do all these like facial kind of things and I could feel my muscles really just needed to like tense up. And it's just something where my brain will tell me like, dude, like you must, give in to this, like scratch that itch and just move your face in a weird way, right? And sometimes I'll do that. Like I'll open my mouth like super wide like that a lot of the time. And I have other lip tics that I do. But I always feel some cases like the need to just control that, right? And there's been this self-help thing that I've been studying recently where they talk about how there's really two muscles inside of you, right? There's that need to control everything, which is usually ego-based, where you feel the need to control everything that you say and control your perception of how everyone else sees you. The thing is, when you try to do that for every single person, this is a never-ending battle, especially if you're trying to have a frame with one person and then another, and you're trying to get them all to see you in different ways. Like, that is super challenging. And people are going to see that. They're like, why are you acting around him this way? Like, cool. And then you're acting around them, right? So for me, I've just started the last few years, like, stop trying to be cool, right? Like, I've just kind of accepted the fact that I'm a dork. Like I like very nerdy things. Like I like business, reading business and marketing and sales books on how to make money, and I like very niche self-help books as well about like raising your vibrational frequency and some like spiritual woo-woo stuff because I like to read books as more of a thought experiment to be exposed to different ideas. But for me, when I put myself out there, I do this really to express who I am, as opposed to trying to impress other people, which is what a lot of people try to do on social media. You see these people and they look like they're in super shape and super good shape, and they're like, yeah, I've always been like this, I've always been like that. And it's like, being perfect is, first of all, impossible, but it's also very overrated. Like even when you look at these people, these like Hollywood celebrities, and people are like, oh my God, like Angelina Jolie, like she is absolutely perfect. Like John Hamm, like absolutely perfect. These are real human beings, right? And I'm sure they have things that they don't themselves don't want to talk about. But if they did, I think that would really make people connect with them as a human being more so. And again, don't use this to manipulate people to buy your products because this stuff is very powerful and you can definitely use this to manipulate people. In fact, I've seen people where I've bought one of their products and then they'll come out with a future product and I can see that they have this like fake vulnerability story where they're talking about their backstory and just the intonation of their voice, I can tell they're not being honest. And that for me was like, I'm not following this person anymore. Like they're in, maybe I will in the future when they've gone through this phase, but they're basically just out there trying to fake it and get people to pay them for being fake. And they're not really being vulnerable. I think one of the biggest things I've learned too is when you are feeling vulnerable, like don't talk about it right away. It's something where you might have to actually bottle it up, but what I like to do is when I'm in that mode, I like to just go and write down how I was feeling in that moment and really just telling the story. And then that way in the future, when I do allude to it, I think it's a lot more powerful. I had something where going back to the release and the control mechanisms where you do need that release. One of the things I've been doing, and I didn't do it yesterday, which was bad, and I need to do it today again because I did every other day this week, is I do these guided releases where you basically just breathe a few times. It's not meditation, but you basically focus in on those emotions and those bad things that have happened to you and you think about them, right? Stuff that happened in your childhood, stuff that triggers you and into being angry or sad or basically hits you on a very emotional level. And this can be words in a lot of cases. This can be seeing certain people. This can be colors. This can be going to certain places. These things can trigger and bring up a lot of emotions that are really deep inside of you. So what I like to do is with this exercise, you breathe in and you feel those emotions to the fullest. And sometimes, man, you go deep. Like sometimes I go really deep and I get very emotional. Like, and to the point on Monday, I was in like some park. There's all these people walking their dogs around me, and I'm doing this guided release, and like there's tears coming down my eyes, right? And even saying that, I felt like a little bit sad right there. But one of the things that I've really needed to release is I have lost this friend about a year ago at this point, and this dude was sick for a couple of years. He had brain cancer, and it was weird because I lost my uncle about almost 2.5 years ago at this point to brain cancer. Then there was Downey from the Tragically Hip, who then lost his battle with brain cancer. And then my other buddy, about a year ago, lost his battle with cancer. And it was something where at the funeral, I couldn't just like open up and really express how I felt. Like I bottled everything else. And it's funny because my mom always tells me my grandfather, that's what he did. And that's probably why he passed away in his sleep. So for me, I realized like I need to have that. And even saying this right now, I can feel that control mechanism in me, like keeping those emotions in me right now so that I don't like bawl out on camera. And again, I don't want to do that because like, I don't know, I'd rather just do all that stuff on my own time. But what I did was recently, again, I had one of those guided releases and I went super deep and I just kept wanting to release that. And I felt like super bad for a few minutes. Because guided releases, like, I think with people make this misinterpretation with meditation. It's like something you do once and it's like, no, I feel fine and I just need to do meditation and everything's going to be taken care of. No, that is not what happens. I think guided releases are super important because you go deep into those emotions, you feel them to the fullest, and then you just let them go and you go about with your day. And you need to do this a few times to actually release that thing. And maybe it never will release, right? But it's like a lot of other things where it's like, oh, be a man, like don't show your emotions. And I think in some cases people are too soft and you definitely need to harden up in some cases and get outside of your comfort zone. But this isn't what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here is really going deep into those on your own time, being in a very comfortable place. And I've done this with people before where I've walked them through these things. They're like, man, like I actually felt a little bit better after. Like I didn't realize I had all that stuff like happening in my subconscious. And when you aren't vulnerable like that, like you really push people a lot away. This is what I think the attractive character is such a big thing because the attractive character, when you do things like these and you're vulnerable, you're going to attract a lot of people that are going to like you, but more importantly, you're going to repel the people that don't like you and are like, no, like I don't like that person for opening up about that specific subject. And that's awesome because those people who really already liked you, like they're going to become diehards and they're going to increase loyalty with you. And again, this is a big leadership thing. I see a lot of leaders where they aren't willing to open themselves up and really put themselves out there. And that's really one thing where it prevents them from connecting with their employees, with all their subordinates, with their coworkers. If you want to connect with people, like really just put yourself out there. And if you're weird like I am, like really lean into your weirdness and just accept the fact that you're a massive dork. Like even me, dude, I like the Toronto Maple Leafs as you can see in the background, like huge diehard fan. Can't imagine ever doing that. If anyone else is like, "Oh, now you're this team," I'd be like, "No, like I don't like that." Like I'll die. Like I am such a diehard Leafs fan. Like I bleed blue. And when they lose, like I feel it hard, right? Like the last 2 years when they've been eliminated by the Boston Bruins in Game 7, like man, it is like a jab in my heart. Like that day, I'll feel like super, super sad, and the next day I'll be like, ah, whatever. Like it's just a game, and I don't even watch that much hockey anymore, to be honest. At the same time, I'm a weird dude. Like I like board games, I like business books, I'm obsessed with movies and TV. Like as you can see, I have a Back to the Future show shirt on, and I've been watching Back to the Future while working as well some days because I haven't watched these movies in almost 10 years now, and I've been like, I really need to watch them, and we're approaching October 21st too, which is the date of Back to the Future, and only a nerd like me would know stuff like that. This really, though, helps you connect with other people, and again, we're coming from that expression part of you, right? When you put yourself out there on a consistent basis, people are like, wow, like this person is really just, they're being risky, right? That's what social media I think really is. Like, it's a very dangerous thing and risky because you're putting yourself out there to be judged. But again, some people aren't going to like that, but the people that do like it, they're going to become your most diehard and loyal fans. One of my favorite quotes, it might even be like my favorite quote, is by Chuck Palahniuk. I think it's in Invisible Monsters, but you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below or wherever you're watching this, or just message me or email me and let me know. But I think it's in Invisible Monsters, where it's the only way to be truly happy is to risk being completely cut open. And it's true. Like, you have to put yourself out there and risk being, like, having your head sliced off to be completely happy. Because again, you can push back down those parts of your personality and they're going to stay stuck in your subconscious. But when you put yourself out there and you're like, look, like, this is who I am and that's the way it is, people are going to see that you're honest and they're going to trust you and they're going to see you as a leader. And sure, you can use this to like sell people stuff, whatever. That's fine if you really want to do that as like a tactic and some like power tool where you're like, oh, it's time to do that move to get people to buy. And sure, you can do that if you really want. But I think this is something where, again, you need to be comfortable and it takes time to be vulnerable. If I'd been talking about this when I'd first started recording these videos, it would seem not genuine. And this is a topic I'm definitely going to be talking about in the future because I think it's a huge thing. And again, I think a lot of people misuse it on social media as this like tactic tool, and it just becomes annoying and people can see that they're faked. It's like, hey, like, I'm feeling this like super vulnerable right now. Oh my God, buy my product, link in my bio. Like, and it's like, all right, like, you missed the whole point. Like, I think vulnerability is something where you share that and then there's no call to action at the end of that video. Man, feels really good to talk about this. This is why I think like psychologists, I think, are overrated because they just sit there and they just ask people questions and people answer and they share and they feel better because they're releasing a lot of those things on an emotional level. Like, they're talking about how they're feeling. And as men, we're not taught that, right? Like, as men, we're taught to like push down all of those emotions and like be strong and put up this front on the outside. So again, when you're authentic, it just makes it like a lot easier. One of the best exercises that I'll do sometimes with people, this one's really powerful, as well as the guide releases, but this one's really powerful. I got it from this Dean Graziosi book, like Millionaire Success Habits, where he talks about the 7 levels of why. So he was with a consultant and he wanted his team to open up more. And they would be like, okay, like, what do you want? Like, yeah, I want this. Okay, like, why do you want that? It's like, oh, I want that because I want money. It's like, okay, like, why do you want money? It's like, oh, because I want to buy like some awesome things. Cool, cool. Like, why do you want to own awesome things? Well, like, growing up, I just didn't have that stuff. Okay, cool. Like, why? Well, like, my family was super poor and, it just was something. It's like, okay, like, why? Well, it made me feel like very sad. All right, so like, why? And then on that last one, it's usually like something very deep where the person's like, because, so like, I want to have this money because growing up I didn't have any myself and that made me feel like ashamed. So I want to have enough money so I can support my family and give them the things that I never had growing up. And it's like, whoa, okay. And that's like a deeper thing, right? And in some cases in those, like, you get to question 4 or 5 and some people are like super deep already. And then you go even deeper and it's like, oh man. And asking the why is always important, right? You always hear these things. It's like, start with why. I think it's like a Simon Sinek thing, and that's fine. And I definitely agree with that. Like, if you don't have a why, then everything else is kind of irresponsible. And I'll be honest, like, I don't have like my why like 100% down at this point. Like, I know kind of the direction that I'm headed in. And even if you ask me, like, why do you do the underground marketing conspiracy every single day? And I would probably just be like, man, like, I just want to help people. Like, I want to help them become a better version of themselves. I know that's super generic because people say it all themselves, but I think for me at the same time, it's like I want it so that when I eventually do have a family and I do have kids, that I don't have to worry about money. And even then, I have more money that I can give back to help people not stay poor, to help them become self reliant and really just transcend their current situation that they're in their life. All right, I think we've talked enough about this today. And yeah, we definitely opened up a little bit today. I'll go in the future and tell some other stories of vulnerability. Glad I was able to actually control it today, but in the future, I'm sure I'll release. But if you did like this video, I want you to consider going back and rewatching maybe a few other episodes, maybe even just one, seeing if you are interested in some of the other marketing and sales content that I talk about. And if you are listening to this, whether it's on Deezer or TuneIn or Spotify or iTunes or whatever podcast you're listening to, consider subscribing. And that is all for today. I will see you next time on another episode of the Underground